5 years after my husband, Marcos, divorced me and married my best friend, Aisha, I was living under a bridge in Mississippi with my little son, Jamal. One stormy night, as I held him close to shield him from the cold, a sleek black car pulled up through the rain. When the door opened, I froze. Standing before me was my wealthy mother-in-law, Eleanor, the woman Marcus swore had mourned my death. Her eyes glistened with tears as she whispered, "Teniola, you're supposed to be gone." My dear friends, before I share this story, I thank you from the depths of my heart. Your love and support give me the courage to reveal these painful truths. If you're new here, please subscribe so you never miss another tale of survival, betrayal, and redemption. That night, as the rain pounded the bridge above us, I clutched Jamal tighter, his small body trembling against mine. The cold seeped through my threadbare coat, and I whispered, "Hold on, baby, Mama's got you," though my voice shook with doubt. 5 years ago, Marcus, my husband of 28 years, had walked away, leaving me with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. Now, here I was, a 59-year-old black woman from Mississippi, reduced to a shadow under a bridge, my life erased by his lies. I thought of our wedding day, how his blue eyes sparkled under the church's stained glass, promising forever. How had forever turned into this? The wind howled, and I pressed my cheek against Jamal's damp hair, wondering if God still saw us. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. "You're supposed to be gone." Why would Marcus tell her I was dead? My fingers traced the edge of a worn photo in my pocket, our old family picture, now creased and fading. Was I really nothing to him? The question burned unanswered as headlights faded into the storm. I couldn't shake the image of Eleanor standing there, her silver hair plastered to her face, her tailored coat ruined by the mud. She'd always been kind to me, even when Marcus started pulling away, but I never imagined she'd believe I was gone. I remembered her at our wedding, smiling as I served her my mama's cornbread recipe, saying, "Teniola, you're a blessing to this family." Now, her tears felt like a mirror to my own, reflecting a pain I couldn't name. Was she grieving me, or the lie Marcus had spun? I shifted on the damp cardboard, my knees aching, and tucked a thin blanket around Jamal's shoulders. His soft snores were my only comfort, but they couldn't quiet the questions swirling in my head. How long had Marcus planned this betrayal? Had Aisha, my best friend, known all along? I closed my eyes, picturing the garden I used to tend, its roses now likely overgrown. That garden had been my sanctuary, but even it couldn't save me from this. My chest tightened, fear whispering that I'd never escape this darkness. The bridge groaned above us, and I flinched, half expecting it to collapse. Every creak felt like a reminder of how fragile my world had become. 5 years ago, I was a nurse, respected in our small Baptist community, singing in the choir on Sundays. Now, I was nobody, just a woman with a child and no home. I thought of the hospital where I'd worked, the way patients used to thank me for my gentle hands. Did anyone there even remember me? Marcus had taken more than our marriage. He'd stolen my identity, my place in the world. I reached for the photo again, my thumb brushing over his face, wondering when he'd stopped loving me. The rain slowed, but the chill lingered, and I hummed a hymn softly. Amazing Grace, to calm my racing heart. Jamal stirred, his tiny hand gripping my finger, and I wondered if he'd ever know the woman I used to be. What kind of mother could I be now, with nothing to give? The uncertainty gnawed at me, a quiet terror I couldn't shake. Eleanor's voice kept replaying, her whisper sharp as a blade. "You're supposed to be gone." I couldn't understand why Marcus would lie like that, not just to her, but to everyone. I remembered the day he handed me the divorce papers, his face cold, his pen scratching the signature with no hesitation. "Teniola, we've got nothing to show for 28 years, he'd said, as if my love, my prayers, my sacrifices were invisible. I'd begged God for a child, spent countless nights fasting, hoping for a miracle, and then, at 54, it came. A pregnancy confirmed in a sterile hospital room after I'd fainted on the street. I'd thought it would bring Marcus back, but instead I found him marrying Aisha, my confidant, the woman who'd held my hand through every disappointment. Her betrayal cut deeper than his, a knife twisted in my heart. I looked at Jamal, his face peaceful in sleep, and felt a flicker of strength. But how could I raise him alone, with no money, no home? The weight of that question pressed down, heavier than the rain. I shifted, my back aching against the concrete, and noticed a scrap of paper stuck to my shoe. a grocery list scrawled in someone else's hand, discarded like me. It was a small thing, but it stung, reminding me of the life I'd lost. I used to make lists like that, planning Sunday dinners for Marcus and our church friends. Now I scavenged for scraps to feed Jamal. I thought of Aisha, wearing the pearl earrings Marcus had once promised me, living in the house I'd scrubbed clean. Had she laughed when he told the world I was dead? The idea made my stomach churn, but I pushed it down, focusing on Jamal's steady breathing. I'd heard rumors of a funeral, flowers piled high for a woman who wasn't gone, who had mourned me. The thought was both absurd and crushing, like a joke I wasn't in on. I hugged Jamal closer, his warmth grounding me, but fear crept in again. What if Eleanor hadn't come by chance? What if someone had sent her? The rain had stopped, leaving only the drip of water from the bridge's edge, each drop a tick of time I couldn't afford to lose. I looked at Jamal, his lashes dark against his cheeks, and wondered what kind of future I could give him. 5 years ago, I'd been a wife, a nurse, a woman with a place in the world. Now I was a ghost, erased by Marcus's lies and Aisha's betrayal. Eleanor's face haunted me, her eyes wide with shock, her hands trembling as she reached for me. "You're supposed to be gone," she'd said, but there was something else in her voice. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. Had she doubted Marcus's story all along? I didn't know, but her presence stirred a spark of hope I hadn't felt in years. Could she help us? Or was this just another cruel twist, like the life I'd already lost? I closed my eyes, praying for answers as the night stretched on, heavy with questions I couldn't yet unravel. As the night stretched on, the bridge's damp chill settled into my bones, but it was nothing compared to the coldness I'd felt in my marriage to Marcus. I sat there, rocking Jamal gently, his soft breaths a fragile anchor to hope. 28 years ago, I'd stood in our small Baptist church, my hands trembling as I vowed to love a white man in a world that didn't always approve. Marcus, with his easy smile and promises of a shared life, had felt like a gift from God. I was 31, a nurse with dreams of a family, singing in the choir on Sundays. How did that love turn to silence? I stared at the dark water pooling nearby, its ripples catching faint street light. My mind drifted to those early years, when Marcus would kiss my forehead after a long shift, his calloused hands warm against mine. But as the years passed, my empty womb became a wall between us. Did he ever really see me, or was I just a placeholder for someone else? The thought stung, sharp as the wind cutting through my coat. I remembered the first time I noticed Marcus pulling away, maybe 10 years into our marriage. He'd come home late, his boots heavy with mud, his eyes avoiding mine. "Work's tough," he'd mutter, grabbing a beer and sinking into the couch. I'd cook his favorite smothered pork chops, hoping to spark the old warmth, but he'd eat in silence, his fork scraping the plate like a warning. I'd pray at night, my knees pressed into the hardwood, asking God to fix what I couldn't. Why couldn't I give him a child? I tried everything, doctors, herbs, even fasting until my stomach ached. Each negative test felt like a verdict. I was failing him. I caught him once, staring at a young couple with a stroller, his jaw tight, a look I didn't recognize. Was that when he started to resent me? I pushed the memory down, my fingers brushing Jamal's curls. His innocence was all I had left, but it couldn't erase the fear that I'd never been enough. Our community noticed the change too. At church, where I'd once led the choir, sisters started whispering behind their hymnals. "Poor Teniola, no babies after all this time," they'd say, their pity sharp as thorns. I kept my head high, sang louder, but their eyes followed me, judging. Marcus stopped coming to services, claiming work, but I saw his truck parked at a bar downtown. I'd walk home alone, the Mississippi heat heavy on my shoulders, my garden my only refuge. I'd talk to my roses, their petals soft under my fingers, as if they could understand my loneliness. "Y'all bloom for me, okay?" I'd whisper, half laughing, half crying. But flowers can't love you back. I wondered if Marcus had found someone else, someone who could give him what I couldn't. The thought twisted in my gut, but I stayed, bound by my vows, and the hope he'd come back to me. Was I a fool to believe in forever? The question lingered, heavy as the damp air around us. By the time I turned 50, my hair was streaked with gray, my smile a ghost of itself. Marcus barely spoke to me, his presence in our home like a shadow passing through. I'd catch him on the phone, his voice low, laughing in a way he never did with me. Who was he talking to? I never asked, too afraid of the answer. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, bandaging wounds, comforting patients, but even there I felt invisible. Colleagues I'd known for years started treating me like a stranger, their conversations fading when I walked by. Had Marcus told them something? I'd lie awake at night, the ceiling fan humming, wondering when I'd stop being his wife and become a burden. I clung to my faith, singing blessed assurance under my breath, but doubt crept in. Did God still hear me? I looked at Jamal, his small chest rising and falling, and felt a pang of guilt. How could I doubt when I had him? The silence in our home grew crueler with each year. Marcus would stay out all night, his clothes carrying the faint scent of perfume when he returned. I'd wash his shirts, my hands shaking, pretending not to notice. I'd pray harder, my Bible worn at the edges, but the miracles I begged for never came. I thought of Aisha, my best friend, who'd sit in my kitchen sipping sweet tea, telling me to be patient. He'll come around, Teniola, she'd say, her smile warm, her hand on mine. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker I couldn't place. Was she hiding something even then? I pushed the thought away, blaming my own paranoia. I'd always trusted Aisha, shared my fears with her over countless Sundays. How could I suspect her? Yet, as I sat under the bridge, the memory of her glances at Marcus during church picnics gnawed at me. Had I missed the signs all along? The possibility felt like a stone in my chest. I pulled Jamal closer, his warmth a shield against the memories flooding back. Those 28 years had worn me down. Each silent dinner, each unanswered prayer chipping away at who I was. I'd once been Teniola, the nurse who made patients laugh, the soprano who lifted the congregation. Now I was just a woman under a bridge, erased by the man I'd loved. But Eleanor's face tonight, her trembling hands, her whispered words, they stirred something in me. Why had she come? The question hung there, unanswered, as I traced the outline of Jamal's face in the dark. He was my miracle, my reason to keep going. But I couldn't shake the fear that this wasn't over. What had Marcus told her to make her believe I was dead? I hummed softly, a hymn to steady my heart, but the doubt lingered, sharp and insistent. Something was coming, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. The morning after Eleanor's car vanished into the rain, I woke to Jamal's soft whimpers, his small body curled against mine under the bridge. My hands shook as I smoothed his hair, my mind still reeling from her words, "You're supposed to be gone." But my thoughts didn't linger there long. They pulled me back to that cold autumn evening, 5 years ago, when everything I'd known crumbled. I could still feel the weight of Marcus's gaze, his blue eyes hard as he slid a manila envelope across our kitchen table. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, my heart pounding like it knew what was coming. "Divorce papers, Teniola," he said, his tone flat. 28 years and we've got nothing to show for it." My knees buckled, but I gripped the table, the wood grain biting into my palms. How could he call our love nothing? I stared at the papers, his signature already scrawled in sharp ink, and wondered when I'd become invisible to him. Was it my fault we had no children? The question clawed at me, raw and relentless. I wanted to scream, to beg him to remember the woman he'd married, but my voice caught in my throat, choked by years of silence. Marcus leaned back, his jaw tight, and said, "I'm done carrying you." Carrying me? I'd been the one carrying us, cooking his meals, praying for him, keeping our home warm while he drifted further away. I thought of the nights I'd spent alone, my Bible open to Psalms, searching for answers in the dim light. Had he ever loved me, or was I just a duty he'd grown tired of? I packed a small suitcase, my hands trembling as I folded my nurse's scrubs, their crisp white now faded like my hopes. The neighborhood watched as I walked out, their curtains twitching, their whispers sharp as needles. Poor Teniola couldn't give him a child, I imagined them saying, their pity a weight I couldn't shake. I wandered the streets, the Mississippi air thick with humidity until my legs gave out. Did anyone even care where I'd gone? The thought burned, a wound I couldn't touch. I collapsed on a sidewalk, the concrete cold against my cheek, and woke in a hospital bed, the fluorescent lights harsh above me. A nurse, her badge reading Clara, handed me a chart, her eyes soft with concern. "Mrs. Teniola, you're 6 weeks pregnant," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Pregnant at 54 after 28 years of barren prayers?" I clutched my stomach, tears spilling down my face, a mix of joy and terror swirling inside me. It was a miracle, a gift from God, confirmed by a trial treatment I'd joined at the hospital months before, hoping against hope. I thanked Clara, my hands shaking as I held the ultrasound printout, its grainy image a promise I'd never dared dream. Could this change Marcus's heart? I saw us together again, a family, his arms around me like they used to be. I left the hospital, my steps lighter, my heart daring to hope. But as I walked, a stranger's glance caught my eye, a quick, pitying look that made my skin prickle. Why did she look at me like that? I wore my best dress, a navy one I'd saved for church, and headed to our old house, the ultrasound tucked in my purse. My hands sweated as I walked up the familiar path, the oak tree in the yard still standing tall. I imagined Marcus's face softening, his voice warm again, saying, "Teniola, we can start over." But as I neared the gate, my breath caught. White ribbons draped the porch, cars lined the driveway, and laughter spilled out. I grabbed a neighbor, Miss Ruth, whose apron was dusted with flour. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. She hesitated, her eyes darting away, then said, "Marcus got married today, Teniola, to Aisha." Aisha, my best friend, who'd wiped my tears, who'd prayed with me in the church pews. My purse slipped from my shoulder, the ultrasound fluttering to the ground unnoticed. How could she do this? My legs buckled and I stumbled back, the world tilting under me. Had they planned this all along? I stood frozen, the music from the house slicing through me like a blade. Aisha in my kitchen laughing with Marcus, her hand on his arm during church picnics. Had those moments meant more than I'd seen? I wanted to storm in to scream at them both, but my body felt heavy, my heart too raw to fight. I picked up the ultrasound, its edges damp from the grass, and clutched it to my chest. This child, my miracle, was all I had now. I turned away, the laughter fading behind me, each step a battle against the pain. Miss Ruth called after me, her voice soft. "I'm sorry, Teniola," but I kept walking, the weight of betrayal pressing down. How could Marcus move on so fast? Had Aisha been waiting for this moment? I thought of our shared Sundays, her hugs, her promises that Marcus would change. Were they all lies? The questions piled up, each one a stone in my heart, as I walked into the dusk, alone. I found a bench in a park, the wood slick with evening dew, and sat staring at the ultrasound. Its blurry lines were my only proof that something good remained. I dreamed of telling Marcus, of seeing his eyes light up, but now that dream was ash. Aisha's betrayal hurt worse than his. She'd known my pain, shared my prayers, yet stood in my place. I pressed my hand to my stomach, feeling the faint curve, and whispered, "You're enough, little one." But fear crept in, cold as the night air. How could I raise a child with nothing, no home, no money, no name? I thought of Eleanor, how she'd believed I was dead. What had Marcus told her to make that lie stick? The question hung there, sharp and unanswered, as a street lamp flickered above me. Something wasn't right, and I could feel it, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Sitting on that park bench, the ultrasound paper crumpled in my hand. I felt the world shrink to just me and the life growing inside me. The night air was thick, the distant hum of crickets mocking the chaos in my head. After Marcus's wedding to Aisha, I wandered Mississippi's back roads, my suitcase dragging like a chain. My belly swelled, but so did my fear. What kind of mother could I be with no home, no money? I found a motel room, its walls stained yellow, the bed creaking under my weight. I'd lie there, my hand on my stomach, whispering, "You're my miracle, little one," but the words felt hollow. How could I protect a child when I couldn't protect myself? I saw Marcus and Aisha once at the grocery store. Her arm looped through his, her laugh bright as the earrings that should have been mine. Their happiness burned, a reminder of my erasure. Had they always planned to replace me? I clutched my worn Bible, its pages soft from years of touch, and prayed for strength. But doubt lingered, sharp as the motel's musty smell. The weeks blurred into months, each day a fight to survive. I took odd jobs, cleaning houses, washing dishes at a diner, my hands raw from bleach and grease. The money barely covered the motel, and soon I was out on the streets, my belly heavy. People in our town turned away, their eyes skimming over me like I was a ghost. I remembered Sister Grace from church, her kind smile when I sang in the choir. Once I saw her at the market, but she ducked behind a shelf, her basket trembling. Did she believe I was dead too? I heard whispers of a funeral Marcus had held, flowers piled high for a woman still breathing. A kid from the neighborhood, barely a teen, handed me a loaf of bread and said, "Mister, Marcus told everybody you passed Miss Teniola." My laugh was bitter, catching in my throat. A funeral? For me? The idea was absurd, but it cut deep, like a blade I didn't see coming. I found shelter under the bridge when the motel money ran dry, the concrete cold against my back. Jamal was born there, in a storm, his cries piercing the dark. Holding him, I felt love so fierce it scared me, but also a fear that never left. How could I keep him safe? I'd scavenged for food, my shoes worn thin, my pride worn thinner. Once I passed Aisha on the street, her purse gleaming, her nails painted red. She didn't see me, but I saw her living in my house, tending my garden. Did she ever think of me? I wondered if Marcus had told her the same lies he'd told his mother, Eleanor. I pictured Eleanor at that fake funeral, her silver hair bowed in grief, her hands clasped tight. Why hadn't she questioned him? The thought gnawed at me, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. I rocked Jamal, his tiny fingers curled around mine, and vowed to keep him alive no matter the cost. Those 5 years under the bridge were a blur of hunger and shame. I'd beg for coins, my voice hoarse, my eyes downcast. Some folks tossed $1, others spat, calling me names I won't repeat. I'd hum hymns to Jamal, this little light of mine, to drown out the cruelty. But the lie Marcus spread, that I was dead, grew legs. A church friend, Miss Lorraine, slipped me a blanket once, her eyes wet. "They said you were gone, Teniola," she whispered, her cross necklace glinting. "Marcus cried at your memorial." Cried? I wanted to laugh, to scream, but I just nodded, my throat tight. I saw my grave in my mind, covered in lilies I'd never touched. How could he bury me alive? I tucked the blanket around Jamal, its warmth a small mercy, but my heart raced with questions. Was this lie just for Eleanor, or was it bigger? The thought felt heavy, like the river's current pulling at my feet. I kept moving from one corner of town to another, avoiding the places Marcus and Aisha might be. But their shadows were everywhere, in the diner where I washed dishes, in the park where I'd pushed Jamal on a broken swing. I'd catch glimpses of my old life, the mailbox I'd painted blue, the rose bushes I'd pruned. Aisha had taken it all, wearing my role like a stolen dress. I wondered if she slept easily, knowing I was out here, erased. My fingers brushed a scar on my wrist from a burn I got cooking for Marcus years ago. That scar felt like a map of my pain, a reminder of what I'd lost. Had Aisha been plotting from the start? I remembered her quick smiles, the way she'd linger when Marcus was around. Something wasn't right, and it itched at me like a splinter I couldn't pull. I kissed Jamal's forehead, his skin warm, and promised myself I'd find the truth. The nights were the hardest when the world went quiet, and my thoughts grew loud. I'd sit under the bridge, Jamal asleep in my arms, and think of Eleanor. Her shock that night, her trembling hands. Had someone tipped her off? I remembered a letter I'd seen in her purse when I was still part of the family, her handwriting neat but hurried. Was it about me? I couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus's lie was more than just cruelty. It was calculated. Why go to such lengths to erase me? I traced the edge of Jamal's blanket, its threads fraying like my nerves. He was my reason to keep going, but the weight of those 5 years pressed down. Each day a battle to prove I was still alive. The truth was out there, waiting. But it felt like a storm I wasn't ready to face. What had Marcus hidden, and who else was in on it? The rain had stopped, but the bridge's damp chill clung to me, a reminder of the years I'd spent invisible. I held Jamal close, his coughs weak against my chest, each one a stab to my heart. 5 years of scraping by, of dodging Marcus and Aisha's shadows, had left me hollow. But that night something shifted. Eleanor's car had come like a beacon, her face pale with shock under the streetlights. I sat there, replaying her trembling whisper. "Teniola, you're supposed to be gone." My fingers tightened around Jamal's blanket, its frayed edges rough against my skin. Why had she come here, to this forgotten corner of Mississippi? I thought of a church friend's hurried glance last week, her lips parting as if to speak before she turned away. Had someone whispered my name to Eleanor? The question pulsed in my mind, heavy as the river's hum below. I kissed Jamal's forehead, his feverish warmth grounding me, but fear whispered back. What did she want with us now? Her car door had slammed shut, and she'd knelt in the mud, her expensive coat ruined, her eyes locked on Jamal. "This boy, he's my grandson," she said, her voice breaking, her hands hovering like she was afraid to touch him. I nodded, tears burning my eyes, too overwhelmed to speak. Eleanor, the woman who'd welcomed me into her family, who'd praised my cornbread at Sunday dinners, thought I was dead. I saw her now, not as the polished real estate tycoon, but as a mother betrayed by her son. Had Marcus lied to her face? I remembered her at our wedding, her silver hair gleaming, saying, "You're one of us, Teniola." Now her gaze held guilt, maybe regret. I should have questioned him, she said, her voice low, her fingers twisting a gold ring on her left hand. Why hadn't she? I wanted to ask, but Jamal coughed again, and I pulled him closer, my heart racing. Her presence felt like a lifeline, but could I trust it? She stood, brushing mud from her knees, and said, "You're coming with me, both of you now." My stomach twisted. I had nothing, just a bag of clothes and a Bible, no place in her world anymore. "I can't," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I don't belong anywhere." Eleanor's eyes flashed, sharp as the headlights behind her. "You belong to my family," she said, her tone fierce, "and no lie from Marcus can change that." I hesitated, my legs weak from years of running, but her hand reached for mine, steady and warm. I thought of the hospital where I'd learned about Jamal, the nurse's pitying smile. Could Eleanor really bring us back from the edge? I stood, clutching Jamal, his weight heavy but precious. The car's leather seats smelled of wealth, a stark contrast to the bridge's grime. As we drove, the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked windows, and I wondered if this was salvation or just another storm waiting to break. The drive to Eleanor's mansion felt like a dream, the kind you're afraid to wake from. I kept glancing at her, her profile sharp against the dashboard's glow, her hands gripping the wheel too tightly. Was she angry at Marcus or herself? I thought of the letter I'd glimpsed in her purse years ago, her handwriting rushed, almost frantic. Had it held a clue to Marcus's lies? I wanted to ask, but Jamal's soft snores stopped me. He needed me steady, not chasing ghosts. We pulled through iron gates, the mansion looming ahead, its windows glowing like eyes. I'd walked past it once after Marcus's wedding, too ashamed to look closer. Now I was crossing its threshold, my shoes leaving muddy prints on the marble floor. A maid gasped, her tray wobbling, and Eleanor barked, "Get blankets and a doctor for the boy." My heart pounded. Could this be real? I held Jamal tighter, his cough quieter now, and prayed this wasn't a cruel trick. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers, a world I'd forgotten existed. Eleanor led us to a guest room, its bed piled with quilts soft as a cloud. I laid Jamal down, his small body sinking into the mattress, and stroked his hair, my fingers trembling. Eleanor stood in the doorway watching us, her face a storm of emotions. "You've suffered like this," she said, her voice low, "while Marcus lived in my house, lying to me." I saw a flicker of rage in her eyes, but also something softer. Grief, maybe. Had she mourned me all these years? I thought of the funeral rumors, the flowers for a woman who wasn't dead. "I believed him," she said, her hands clenching. "I should have known better." Her words hit me, heavy with truth, but they raised more questions. Why had Marcus gone so far to erase me? I tucked a quilt around Jamal, his breathing easier, and felt a spark of hope ignite. Eleanor brought a tray of food, warm soup, bread, things I hadn't tasted in years. I ate slowly, each bite a reminder of the scraps I'd begged for. She sat across from me, her eyes fixed on Jamal, her fingers tapping the table, a nervous rhythm. "I failed you, Teniola," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I let my son bury you." I shook my head, tears falling, and said, "You trusted him. How could you know?" But inside I wondered, what had made her come looking tonight? I noticed a folded paper in her coat pocket, its edge worn like it had been handled often. Was it the tip that brought her here? My heart raced, the room's warmth not enough to quiet my doubts. Eleanor's eyes met mine, fierce with resolve, and she said, "This ends now." What did she mean? The question hung between us, a thread pulling me toward a truth I wasn't sure I could face. The lake house smelled of pine and fresh linens, a far cry from the damp rot of the bridge. I sat on the porch, watching Jamal chase a butterfly, his laughter a melody that soothed my battered heart. Eleanor had given us this haven, a quiet escape from the world that had cast me out. But even here, with the lake shimmering under the morning sun, I couldn't shake the question that haunted me. Why had Marcus lied so deeply? I sipped coffee from a chipped mug, its warmth steadying my trembling hands. The piece felt fragile, like a glass ornament waiting to shatter. I thought of Eleanor's fierce words in the car. No lie from Marcus can change that. Her resolve was a lifeline, but it stirred doubts. What drove her to find me? I noticed her glance at a folded letter on the kitchen counter yesterday, her fingers hesitating before tucking it away. Was that the clue that brought her to the bridge? My chest tightened, the air heavy with secrets I couldn't yet touch. Inside, Jamal played with a toy truck, his small hands guiding it across the hardwood floor. I marveled at his resilience, his eyes bright despite the hunger he'd known. Eleanor had arranged a doctor's visit, new clothes, and even a tutor to teach him letters. He's family, she'd said, her voice firm, but her eyes softened when she looked at him. I wanted to believe her, but fear whispered that this was too good, too sudden. Had someone tipped her off, or was it a chance? I wandered into the guest room, my fingers brushing the quilt on the bed, its stitches neat but slightly frayed, like my trust. I opened a drawer, looking for a pen, and found a small notebook, its cover worn, Eleanor's initials embossed in gold. My heart skipped. Should I look? I hesitated, my fingers hovering, then flipped it open. A single page, dated years ago, caught my eye. Aisha's name scrawled in Eleanor's sharp handwriting. What did Aisha have to do with her? The discovery sent a chill through me. The notebook's page was brief, a list of names and dates, but Aisha stood out, underlined twice, with church picnic written beside it. I remembered that day, years back, Aisha laughing too loudly, her hand lingering on Marcus's arm. Had Eleanor seen something I hadn't? I closed the notebook, my pulse racing, and tucked it back, afraid of what else it held. I thought of Aisha's promises, her warm hugs in my kitchen, telling me to wait for Marcus to change. Was it all a lie? I sat on the bed, the mattress creaking, and stared at the lake through the window, its surface calm but hiding depths. My mind spun. Had Aisha planned my ruin from the start? I wanted to confront Eleanor, but fear stopped me. What if she knew more than she'd let on? I noticed a photo on the nightstand. Marcus and I at a family barbecue, smiling between us. Her smile looked forced now, like she'd sensed trouble even then. That evening, Eleanor joined me on the porch, her silver hair catching the sunset's glow. "You're safe here, Teniola," she said, her voice steady, but her fingers twisted a napkin, shredding it slowly. I nodded, but the notebook's weight pressed on me. "Eleanor, why did you come that night?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She paused, her eyes flicking to the lake, then said, "A neighbor's note, left at my gate, said you were alive." Her hesitation, the glance away, made my stomach knot. Was that all? I thought of the letter in her purse, its worn edges, and wondered if it held the real reason. "Marcus lied to me," she added, her voice hard, "and I'll make it right." Her words were firm, but her hands shook, betraying something unspoken. Did she know about Aisha's role? I wanted to ask, but Jamal's giggle from inside stopped me. He needed this piece, and so did I. Eleanor stood, brushing crumbs from her skirt, and said, "I'm hosting a dinner soon, Teniola. Business folks, family, Marcus and Aisha, too." My heart lurched. "Face them." "We'll tell the truth there," she said, her eyes blazing. I saw the notebook in my mind, Aisha's name underlined, and felt a surge of courage mixed with dread. What truth was Eleanor planning to reveal? I thought of her at the mansion, commanding rooms with a glance, but now her shoulders slumped slightly, like she carried a burden. Had she suspected Marcus's lies before? I remembered a church sermon she'd attended with us, her head bowed longer than usual, her lips moving silently. Was she praying for answers even then? I nodded, my throat tight, and said, "Okay, let's do it." For Jamal, I'd face anything. But as she walked inside, I noticed her pause at the counter, her hand brushing that letter again. What was she hiding? I sat alone, the lake's quiet ripples mocking my racing thoughts. The notebook, the letter, Eleanor's guarded looks. They pointed to something bigger, something planned. Aisha's betrayal wasn't just personal. It felt orchestrated, like a script I hadn't read. I thought of her at church, her smile too wide, her hugs too tight. Had she been playing me all along? I looked at Jamal, now asleep on the couch, his toy truck clutched in his hand, and felt a fire kindle inside me. He deserved a name, a future, not the lies that buried me. Eleanor's dinner would be a reckoning, but what if it revealed more than I could handle? I touched the Bible in my pocket, its leather worn smooth, and prayed for strength. The truth was close, but it felt like a door I wasn't sure I could open. What had Aisha done to make Marcus turn his back on me? The question burned, a spark waiting to ignite. The chandelier's glow cast shadows across the mansion's dining hall, its crystal glinting like eyes watching my every move. I stood at the entrance, Jamal's small hand in mine, my navy dress feeling too tight, too plain for this world of wealth. My heart pounded as guests turned, their whispers sharp, slicing through the clink of silverware. "Is that Teniola?" one woman muttered, her fork frozen midair. I wanted to run, to hide from their stares, but Eleanor's nod from the head of the table kept me rooted. Was I ready for this? I thought of the notebook, Aisha's name underlined, and the letter in Eleanor's purse, secrets waiting to spill. My fingers brushed Jamal's curls, his wide eyes scanning the room, innocent yet heavy with the truth we carried. Could I face Marcus and Aisha without breaking? The air felt thick, charged with anticipation as Eleanor tapped her glass, the sound cutting through the murmurs. What was she about to unleash? I held my breath, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. Eleanor stood, her silver hair catching the light, her voice steady but fierce. "Thank you for joining us tonight," she said, her eyes sweeping the room. "This is about family and the truth." My stomach nodded as I saw Marcus and Aisha near the table's end, his suit crisp, her earrings sparkling, my earrings. Aisha's face paled when she saw me, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Marcus froze, his jaw tight, his eyes darting to Eleanor. Did he know what was coming? "5 years ago," Eleanor continued, "you mourned my daughter-in-law, Teniola, at a funeral built on lies." Gasps rippled through the room, forks clattering. I gripped Jamal's hand, his warmth anchoring me as my legs shook. "She's alive," Eleanor said, pointing to me. "And this is her son, my grandson, Jamal." My throat tightened. How would they react? I noticed a guest, an older man, shift uncomfortably, his napkin twisted in his hands. Had he known Marcus's lie? The question stung, sharp and urgent. Eleanor's voice grew harder, each word a blade. "My son Marcus told me Teniola was dead, while he and Aisha lived in luxury on the grave they dug." Aisha let out a choked sob, her hands covering her face, but Marcus's eyes burned defiant. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't, my heart racing with a mix of fear and fury. Eleanor held up the notebook, its worn cover familiar, and said, "Aisha spread lies about Teniola's fidelity, convincing Marcus she was unfaithful to break their marriage." My breath caught. There it was, the truth from that scribbled page. The room erupted in whispers, heads turning to Aisha, whose mascara streaked her cheeks. Had she planned it all at those church picnics? I remembered her glances at Marcus, her too tight hugs. "I didn't mean," Aisha stammered, her voice breaking, but Eleanor cut her off. "You meant to erase her," she said, her tone icy. What else had they hidden? My mind spun, the truth both freeing and terrifying. I stood taller, my voice finding strength. "Aisha, you were my sister," I said, my words trembling but clear. "You knew my pain and you used it." Her eyes met mine, wide with panic, and she whispered, "Teniola, I'm sorry," but it felt empty, like her promises years ago. Marcus stood, his chair scraping the floor, and shouted, "This is nonsense! She's lying about the boy!" My heart lurched. How dare he deny Jamal? I pulled my son closer, his small body tense, and said, "He's your son, Marcus, and you threw us away." Eleanor slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoing. "Enough," she said, her eyes blazing. "I have proof, letters, witnesses." I noticed a woman in the corner, her pearls clutched tight, her face pale. Did she know something too? The room felt like it was closing in, the air heavy with betrayal. Could this truth really set us free? I held Jamal's hand, my courage flickering but growing. The guests were silent now, their eyes darting between us, some nodding, others frozen in shock. Eleanor lifted Jamal into her arms, his small frame light against her strength. "This is Jamal, my heir," she declared, her voice ringing. "The true blood of this family." A few clapped, hesitant, while others whispered, their words lost in the tension. Marcus's face reddened, his fists clenched, but he said nothing, his defiance crumbling. Aisha sobbed louder, her head bowed, her perfect facade shattered. I thought of the years I'd spent invisible, my name buried under their lies. Now I stood undeniable, but my heart ached with the cost. Had I wanted this exposure, this pain laid bare? I noticed Eleanor's hand tremble as she set Jamal down, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of pride and sorrow. Was she ready for what this truth would do to her family? The question hung, sharp as the chandelier's light, cutting through the silence. As the murmurs grew, I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread. The truth was out, but it didn't erase the scars of those 5 years. I looked at Jamal, his eyes wide but trusting, and wondered what this moment meant for him. Would it give him a future or just more pain? Eleanor's voice softened as she turned to me. Teniola, you and Jamal are home now. Her words were warm, but I saw her glance at that folded letter in her purse still tucked away. What more did it hold? I thought of the neighbor who'd tipped her off there note a spark in this storm. Had others known I was alive? The possibility sent a chill through me like a breeze through the open window. The dinner wasn't over, but something bigger was coming, a reckoning I could feel in my bones. What would Marcus and Aisha do now that their lies were exposed? The dining hall silence lingered like a held breath, the chandelier's light casting long shadows over the stunned guests. I stood frozen, Jamal's hand warm in mine, my heart still racing from Eleanor's revelation. The truth about Aisha's lies and Marcus's betrayal hung heavy, but the storm wasn't over. 2 days later, as I tucked Jamal into bed in the mansion's guest room, the door flew open, the wood creaking sharply. Marcus stormed in, his face pale, his tie loose, his eyes wild with fury. "What have you done, Teniola?" he spat, his voice low and venomous, his finger jabbing the air. My stomach churned. How dare he come here? I thought of the notebook, Aisha's name underlined, and wondered if he knew we'd found it. Had he come to fight for his place? I stepped in front of Jamal, his small form curled under the quilt, and felt a fire kindle inside me. Could I stand up to him after all these years? The question burned sharp as the moonlight slicing through the window. Marcus's boots scuffed the polished floor, his breath heavy with whiskey. "You think you can take everything," he said, his hands clenching, his wedding ring glinting, a ring I'd once polished with pride. I saw Aisha hovering in the doorway, her makeup smudged, her dress wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. "Teniola, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We didn't mean to hurt you." Didn't mean to? I remembered her laughter at church picnics, her hand on Marcus's arm, and my chest tightened. "You spread lies about me," I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "You told him I cheated." Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it, his silence louder than words. I thought of the years I'd spent invisible, my name buried under their deceit. Had they laughed together, planning my erasure? I noticed Aisha's necklace, a pearl pendant I'd admired years ago, now dangling like a trophy. How long had she coveted my life? My courage grew, but so did my fear of what came next. Jamal stirred, his voice soft. "Mama, who's that?" My heart broke at his innocence, his eyes searching Marcus's face for something familiar. "Daddy?" he said, hopeful, his small hand reaching out. Marcus flinched, his jaw tight, and snapped, "Don't call me that!" The words cut deeper than any blade, and Jamal's face fell, his shoulders slumping. I knelt beside him, stroking his hair, and said, "He's not worth it, baby." But inside I was shaking. How could he reject his own son? I stood, my voice rising. "Get out, Marcus, you've done enough," Aisha sobbed, stepping forward. "Please, forgive us, Teniola." Forgive? I saw her glances in church, her lies in that notebook, and felt rage bubble up. Had she ever been my friend? I noticed her fingers twisting the necklace, her nails chipped, a detail that felt like a crack in her facade. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their desperation. What would they do now, stripped of their lies? Before I could speak again, Eleanor's cane struck the marble floor, the sound sharp as a gunshot. She stood in the doorway, her silver hair gleaming, her eyes cold. "If you touch her, Marcus, you're done," she said, her voice like steel. "I'll cut you off before dawn." Marcus froze, his chest heaving, his hands dropping to his sides. I saw fear in his eyes, not the arrogance I'd known for years. Was this the first time he'd faced real consequences? Eleanor stepped closer, her gaze pinning him like a moth. "I built this family," she said, her voice trembling with fury, "and I'll tear it down before I let you destroy it." Aisha crumpled into a chair, her sobs loud, her hands covering her face. I noticed a crumpled tissue in her hand, streaked with mascara, a small sign of her unraveling. Could she feel the weight of her betrayal now? My heart pounded, torn between triumph and sorrow. Was this justice enough? Eleanor turned to me, her eyes softening. Teniola, you and Jamal are my family now." Her words were warm, but they carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I thought of the letter in her purse, its worn edges hinting at secrets still untold. Had she known more than she'd shared? I wanted to ask, but Marcus's voice cut through, low and bitter. "You think this changes anything? I'll be back." His threat hung in the air, but Eleanor's glare silenced him. She pointed to the door. "Leave, both of you, tonight." Marcus hesitated, his eyes flicking to Jamal, a fleeting softness there, quickly gone. Did he feel anything for his son? I held Jamal close, his warmth grounding me, but my mind raced. Aisha's necklace caught the light again, a reminder of the life she'd stolen. What would happen when they walked out that door? The question lingered, heavy as the silence that followed their footsteps. I watched from the window as Marcus and Aisha left, their suitcases dragging, their heads bowed under the mansion's floodlights. Marcus glanced back once, his eyes dark with anger, but he said nothing. Aisha clung to him, her face pale, her steps unsteady. I should have felt victory, but instead, a deep sorrow settled in my chest. 28 years of love, of prayers, reduced to this moment. I thought of the roses I'd planted in our old garden, now likely overgrown under Aisha's care. Had I fought for this, or was it Eleanor's fight? I noticed a maid in the hall, her eyes wide, her hands clutching a tray as if she'd heard everything. Did the whole town know by now? I turned to Jamal asleep again, his face peaceful, and felt a flicker of strength. This wasn't the end, but a beginning. What would Marcus do next, now that his world had crumbled? The mansion's quiet halls felt like a new world, the weight of Marcus and Aisha's departure still heavy in my chest. I sat by Jamal's bed, his small chest rising under a quilt, his face peaceful in sleep. The dinner's truth had shaken me, but it also lifted a veil, letting me breathe for the first time in years. I was no longer the ghost Marcus had made me. Yet, as I traced the edge of my worn Bible, its leather soft from years of touch, I wondered if justice could heal the scars of 28 years. Eleanor had moved us into the mansion, her staff now bowing with respect, their eyes soft where pity once lived. A maid left a vase of roses on my dresser, their scent sweet but sharp, reminding me of the garden I'd lost. Had the town heard the truth by now? I thought of the church, my old sanctuary, and felt a pull to return. Could I face them after all this? The question lingered, soft as the moonlight on the floor. Eleanor insisted we stay, her voice firm but warm. "This is your home, Teniola," she said, her silver hair catching the morning light as she handed Jamal a book. I saw her smile falter when she thought I wasn't looking, her fingers brushing that folded letter in her purse. What secrets did it still hold? I didn't ask, not yet, focusing instead on Jamal's laughter as he traced letters with a tutor. He was growing stronger, his cheeks fuller, his cough gone. But at night, when the house was still, I'd sit by the window staring at the stars and think of the years stolen from me. I'd been a nurse, a choir singer, a wife. Now what was I? The fear of being forgotten crept back, a shadow I couldn't shake. I noticed a church bulletin on the table, its edges curled, announcing a prayer service. Could I reclaim my place there? My heart ached with the possibility, both daunting and hopeful. I organized a prayer service at our old Baptist church, my hands trembling as I wrote the invitation. The congregation welcomed me, their hugs warm but hesitant, their eyes searching for the woman I'd been. Sister Grace, her cross necklace glinting, whispered, "We thought you were gone, Teniola." I smiled, but inside, I wrestled with forgiveness. Could I let go of Marcus and Aisha's betrayal? I stood at the pulpit, Jamal beside me, and sang Amazing Grace, my voice shaky but strong. The notes carried years of pain, but also a new strength. I spoke of forgiveness, not for them, but for me, to be free. "I forgive to heal," I said, my eyes wet. For Jamal, for myself. The congregation clapped, their hands a soft thunder, but I noticed a few empty pews. Had some believed Marcus's lies too long? The question stung, but I pushed it aside, focusing on Jamal's small hand in mine. Jamal grew tall over the years, his eyes bright with kindness, his laughter a balm to my soul. Eleanor set up a trust fund, introduced him to her business partners as her heir. Her pride clear in every word. I watched him learn, his pencil moving carefully over math problems, and felt a peace I hadn't known. But late at night, I'd see Marcus's face in my dreams, his last glance of anger at the mansion. Had he felt anything for Jamal? I heard rumors of him and Aisha, debts piling up, their marriage fraying like an old rope. I didn't seek them out. Some wounds don't need reopening. I thought of Aisha's necklace, the pearls I'd once admired, now a symbol of her greed. Did she regret her lies? I pushed the thought away, my fingers tracing the Bible's pages, its verses a steady anchor. The truth had set me free, but it hadn't erased the pain. Could I truly let it go? One evening, as I tucked Jamal into bed, he looked up, his eyes wide, and asked, "Mama, why didn't Daddy love me?" "Oxo!" The question pierced me, sharp as a thorn, and I fought back tears. I stroked his hair, my voice soft. "Baby, he didn't know how to love, but you've got me and Grandma Eleanor, and that's enough." He smiled, drifting to sleep, but I sat there, the room's quiet pressing in. I thought of the church service, the congregation's applause, and realized I'd found my place again. I wasn't just the woman Marcus erased. I was Teniola, a mother, a survivor. Eleanor joined me, her cane tapping softly, and said, "You've given me a family again." Her eyes held a warmth I'd missed, but also a shadow. Regret, maybe. Had she carried guilt all these years? I noticed her purse on the table, that letter still inside, unopened. What final truth did it hold? The stars outside gleamed, a reminder of the light that had broken through my darkness. Jamal would grow up strong, carrying the family name with honor, unlike his father. I thought of the roses on my dresser, their petals soft but fleeting, like the life I'd rebuilt. Justice hadn't erased the pain, but it had given me the strength to stand tall. I'd learned that forgiveness wasn't for Marcus or Aisha. It was for me to live free. As I closed my Bible, its pages worn but steady, I felt a quiet peace settle in. The truth had found its way, as it always does, and I was ready to walk in its light. I looked at Jamal, his dreams unburdened, and knew my suffering had built his future. But what would the world say when they saw us rise? The question lingered, soft but certain, as the night carried us forward. My journey has taught me that no matter how deep the betrayal, the truth will always find its way, bringing justice and hope to those who endure. I am Teniola, 59 years old, and I've learned that forgiveness isn't about erasing pain, but about reclaiming your heart for those who matter most, like my son Jamal. Through the lies and loss, I found my strength, my faith, and my place in a family that saw me when I was invisible. The greatest gift is not revenge, but the freedom to stand tall as the woman you've always been. Now, as I share this with you, I feel a warmth in my soul, knowing I'm not alone in this journey. My dear friends, I'm so grateful for your support. It gives me the courage to tell these stories. Please hit that like button if this moved you. Subscribe to join our community and share your thoughts below. What truths have set you free in your own life? Next time, we'll dive into another tale of resilience and redemption, so don't miss it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'll see you soon.